Good day, dear students. Today I am going to talk about lectures and other forms of organizing teachers at university. There are four issues which I would like to focus on today. The first one, forms of organizing teaching at university. Lecture forms of teaching at university. The third one, function and classification of lectures, and the last one, structure of a lecture and its peculiarities. A higher education institution has a variety of organizational forms of teaching: lectures, seminars, laboratory and practical classes, independent and research work of students, and so on. The leading organizational form of education at university is a lecture. A lecture is an oral presentation intended to present information or teach people about a particular subject, for example, by a university or college teacher. Lectures are used to convey critical information, history, background, theories, and equations. The word lecture comes from the Latin lectionem, meaning reading. The lecture appeared in ancient Greece, was further developed in ancient Rome and in the Middle Ages. The concept of giving a lecture is conditional, rather historical. Indeed, until the middle of the 19th century, lectures were read in the literal sense of the word. In some individual cases, it is advisable to read lectures in full sense of the word. This mainly concerns lectures setting out strict original materials, scientific reports, and lectures by aspiring educators. In all cases, lectures must be presented clearly and expressively. The dignity of verbal expression, to be clear, is total. In the Russian equivalent, достоинство словесного выражения быть ясным. The main didactic purpose of the lecture is to form the necessary basis for students to master the material. The lecture, organized in accordance with good didactic purposes, has a high level of creative interaction of the lecturer with the audience, its cognitive and emotional effectiveness. If the student's thinking ability is active, then the new material is easy and fast to read. So it's necessary to create in the lecture the activity and thinking ability of the audience. The literature analysis allows us to reveal some lecture's main functions. The first function, informational, which provides with necessary information. The second function, stimulating, which arouses interest in the topic. The third one, upbringing, which carries out upbringing influence. Developing function evaluates a phenomena, develops thinking. Orienting function in the problem, in the literature. Explaining interprets the basic concept of science. And the last function is persuasive, which focuses on the system of evidence. The following types of lectures can be distinguished depending on common purposes: learning, propaganda, upbringing, developing, depending on scientific level, academic, and popular. Didactic objectives: introductory, current, consolidation, generalizing, setting, overview, lecture consultation. And depending on the way of presenting the material, you can distinguish lectures: monologues, lecture dialogues, lecture conversations, interactive lecture, problem-solving lectures, lecture visualization, lecture conference, lecture provocation, which planned with errors, video lecture, and others. In addition, we can allocate some lecture evaluation criteria: scientific character, accessibility, unity of form and content, emotionality of presentation, organic connection with other types of activities, and the last one, practice of everyday life. According to our topic, it's important to consider some lecture requirements. It must have a clear structure and logic of disclose of consistency stated issue, conceptual line. Have a solid theoretical core, an important problem. Have a complete coverage of a scientific topic, close connection with the previous material, be evidence and reason, contain a sufficient number of vivid and convincing examples, facts, justifications, have a clear connection with practice. Have the power of logical reasoning and arouse the necessary interest in students, give directions for independent work. Be at the current level of development of science and technology, contain a focus of their development for the coming years. Reflect the methodological processing of the material, the use of pedagogical techniques, sharpening and highlighting the main thoughts and provisions, emphasizing the conclusions, repeating them in various formulations. Be visual, be combined, if possible with a demonstration of other visual materials, models, and samples. Be present in a clear language, contain an explanation of all newly introduced terms and concepts. It's advisable to prepare the concept apparatus in the handout form. The main thing in the lecture is thought consistency, the ability to show what is interesting in the questions being presented, to give formulations, concise, accurate, and memorable, to raise the intellectual energy of students, to cause the movement of thought after the lecture, to achieve a mental response. A university lecture consists of 3 parts: introduction, main part, and conclusion. Introduction, it consists of topic, plan, references are determined, or as a lecture is read where they can read the information in more detail. The main part, the presentation, the scientific content of the topic is presented there. All the key questions are raised. The entire system of evidence is given. In conclusion, the lecture reminds the topic of the lesson, set out reference points for the material, makes a conclusion on all questions of the lessons. The lecture summarizes the entire topic and answers a question at the end of the lecture. Leave time for questions. For the questions asked by students, analyze after the class and think about why such a question was asked and make the necessary changes and additions to the lecture. Be sure to distribute the material in time and strictly adhere to this when giving a lecture. When you are preparing a lecture, it's important to focus on aims, objectives, content, methods, aids, forms, and assignments. At this slide, you can see lecture development structure. The first, topic, aim. Aim, you can see didactic, scientific, educational, development, objectives of the lectures. So you can use to give students more and holistic interconnected knowledge, the level of which is determined by the target setting for each specific topic. To form a scientific picture of the world, abilities and skills of cognitive research activities, to provide during the lectures a creative work of students together with teacher, to educate students professional and business qualities, love for subject, to develop the independent creative thinking, and so on. These were objectives of the lecture. So also we can focus on keywords, and then to prepare a plan, its lecture questions, references. Teaching methods can be presentation, conversation, exercise. Teaching forms, problem lecture, work in a small group, individual, group work, and so on. Teaching aids can be textbook, slides, and so on. Material support and exhibition of literature handouts. An assessment, it can be mini tests, or maybe it can be some questions, and so on. Now I am going to present some psychological and pedagogical recommendations in conducting a lecture. First of all, it's excursion, used to relax a tight audience. Change the intonation necessary to create an emphasis on the main point of the lecture on the most important one. Pause when switching to a new question. Change the pace. It can be fast, slow, moderate of the lecture. And gestures to make speech expressive to emphasize the most important information. Use visual aids, some table, charts, diagrams, images. Approval of students' actions like encouragement. Creating a creative environment, ways to include students in the leading process. Prepare situation, assignments, tasks, tests. Now, dear students, there are some questions which you'll have to answer.